Gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for all the... We've got about a dozen questions to run through. We've got about a half hour. Before we get rolling, let's just begin with a prayer just for this session. And also, let's say a prayer for the ladies who are having their session right now, because I think we as men, we bear a particular responsibility sometimes for the wounds that are caused on the hearts of girls, and sometimes we need to make reparation. I know I do. Of just prayers for them and righting the wrong by... doing what's best for their soul. So let's just start off with a quick prayer for them. Dear Heavenly Father, please send your Holy Spirit down upon our hearts and upon those of the young women. We pray for healing to take place in their hearts and upon ours. And we pray for your spirit of encouragement and wisdom, that we might look to Christ crucified to know how to truly love a woman. We thank you for the gift of our masculinity, and we pray that we can use our bodies to glorify you. And we pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Alrighty, let's get rolling. Okay, number one, is it okay to live with a girl if you're going to go on ahead and marry her? Here's the deal. If you live with a girl before you marry her, know that she is 40% more likely to cheat on you when you are married. If you live with a girl before you marry her, they've done studies on this, and they've found that 75% of couples who shack up before they get married, 75% of them are divorced before their third wedding anniversary. 75%. And so if you want your marriage to last, you save before marriage. You don't jump in bed with her, because the marriage bed should be kept sacred. And when you take it out of that context, I mean, let's be honest. When you get in a relationship that's really physical, what ends up happening? The physical becomes the center of the relationship, and pretty much everything else falls to the side. If you're going to marry this girl, you've got the rest of your life to wake up next to her. But you only have this short period of time to prepare for marriage. And so take this time to prepare for that sacrament. And just follow what the scriptures say and wait until the wedding day. Because the more studying you guys do on what makes a good marriage, it all points back to the Bible, what the Bible originally said. Wait for that girl for marriage. So take that into consideration. If you sleep with a girl before you marry her, you are 3 times as likely to divorce her. And nobody wants a divorce. And so let's take the right steps to make a good marriage. What do you think God thinks about masturbation? In the scriptures, in Genesis chapter 38, we read of the sin of Onan, who spilled his seed on the ground. Now, masturbation, when it comes down to it, being frank, it's basically the same thing as selfishness. It's just loving myself. And what is the purpose of sex? The purpose of sex is babies and bonding. And masturbation doesn't achieve either one of those, because the center of the sexual act becomes me instead of we. And physiologically, they found that people say, well, if I don't masturbate, I've heard that I'm going to die or explode or have prostate cancer, this or that. No. Just to relieve you, your prostate gland produces seminal fluid on a need-to basis. There's not this constant building up where you're just going to explode unless you release it. And so know that your body is not going to be harmed if you stop with this particular thing. Now, for one, they've found, this is amazing, I just learned this, that there's a part of your brain called the medial preoptic nucleus. It's right here. It's the pleasure center of your brain. What they found out is that whenever you experience a sexual release, whether it be through masturbation or through illicit sex or marital sex or whatever, that part of your brain gets trained. If you guys have been in psychology class, you might have heard of Pavlov's dog. The dude rings the bell, the dog salivates, and he thinks it's dinner time and whatever. And they found out that this part of your brain works the same way. So if you train your brain to be sexually aroused by internet pornography, by what is illicit, by what is forbidden, what is dirty, through masturbation, by basically lusting after women and making lust what arouses you, well, what happens when you meet a bride? She's not dirty, she's not forbidden, she's not illicit, you're not hiding from anyone. What they're finding is that husbands are starting to have to look to perversions within marriage, bringing porns into the wedding room, having to go to strip clubs, do this to that, because they trained themselves to be addicted to what was forbidden, what is illicit. And you train your brain. Each time a man experiences a sexual release, he's bonding with whatever it is that he's looking at or doing or seeing. And so that's the way God has just engineered a guy's body to work, because we're supposed to be bonding with our wife and not with these illicit images and stuff. Now, sexual sins like this one can be very, very addictive, but God's grace is stronger. And as I said before, if we guys, as men, 15, 16, 17 years old, 25, if we can't say no to sex, what is our yes worth? And only when we have self-control can you give yourself as a gift to a woman. Until then, it's not a gift. You're just, shooting your hormones and you have no control, and she just happens to be in the way, and so everything lands on her, and you just impose all your lust onto the woman. And this isn't love. This is just, you're in heat, and you should be tied to a tree and stuff like that. You're not free. And so work on overcoming this sin, because if you can't lead yourself to God and to purity, how will you lead a bride there? So take these things to heart. How do you know when someone loves you? The modern understanding of love is like, I don't know, it's like bird poop or something. You're walking, and then boom, and it hits you, and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? Just suddenly, like, love just lands on you out of the blue, and it's just an amazing experience or whatever. The feelings are there, but when they taper off, you're like, well, I don't have the same feelings for the girl. Maybe love is done. Yeah, I guess love is over, and you just go on to another girl. And what you're doing there is we're confusing love with the feelings of being in love. And that's why most divorces, when they happen within the first 2 years of a marriage. Because people start thinking, well, love means you have all these strong feelings. And I guess when the strong feelings go away, I guess that means that love's gone away. And so what is love? One really wise, holy man said that the greater the feeling of responsibility you have for her, the more real love there is. The less responsible you feel for her, it's basically egoism. I love me, and I want you. Instead of I love you, I want what's best for you, girl. And so the more she yearns to lead you closer to what is good for you, your God, that's the extent to which she loves you. And we as guys know, we can say all sorts of things to make a girl's heart melt and this, but it's the actions that speak. So what about foreplay? Okay, well, what is foreplay? Foreplay, basically, what's the intention of foreplay? It's something that should necessarily come before play, I guess, foreplay, so it should come before play, which is basically the gift of the sexual act. And so what are you doing getting ready for something that rousing up all these sexual desires that you know that you can't morally satisfy? It's if I have a Toyota 4Runner truck, imagine if I hopped in the truck and just started revving up the engine and slamming on the brakes at the same time. I got the gas and the brake down at the same time. It's going to kill the engine. And likewise, if we think we can constantly rev up our sexual desires and constantly slam on the brakes, it's going to break the machine, it's going to break the car, and we're going to end up making a lot of mistakes. And so just realize that foreplay is for a married couple because sexual arousal belongs in marriage. If you're being sexually aroused outside of marriage, there's something dishonest there because you're rousing up desires in her that you know you can't morally satisfy. And so it takes integrity. And I know this stuff is hard. One guy asked me, he says, well, Jason, how do I tell my girlfriend that I want to be pure with her without feeling like a total geek? And I said, well, for one, look at the girl and just say, hey, hon, I love you, I like being around with you and stuff, and I've made some mistakes with girls that I don't want to make with you. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to fall in love with you for all the right reasons. And that girl's heart will just melt because she sees that you're not treating her like a thing, but you really want to love her. And these poor girls, God loved them, but so many of them are clueless. They have no idea how they deserve to be treated, and they'll take anything that we give them that even looks like love. And so, yeah, we can rip off the girls, and we can get them to maybe perhaps do sexual favors or this or that, but that's boyhood, and we'll end up feeling empty. A man can say, yeah, I know I could probably get this and do this, but a guy that takes from a girl physically everything she's willing to give him is a guy that's missed the whole point of manhood, which means just to empty yourself for that girl and to lead her. What about oral sex? What about oral sex? Here's the scoop on it, and I hope you don't mind if I'm completely blunt and real and honest and stuff like that. The deal with oral sex is this. If this is pretty blunt, but I'll just be honest. If you need to put your genitals into the mouth of your girlfriend to show her what she means to you, then maybe it shows exactly what she means to you. Take that to heart. And to think, imagine someone right now, you guys are probably going to get married someday. That means your bride is out there. You ever wonder what she's doing? Maybe she's at volleyball practice right now. Maybe she lives out in San Diego. And she's just walking home from school now with her boyfriend. She's dating someone else right now. And they go back to his house. And they get into the house, and he's like, hey, girl, oh, look, no one's home. That's cool. And they sit on the couch, and he puts his arm around your future bride. He says, dude, girl, you're so beautiful. I love you, girl. I'll always be here for you. He's smooth talking her, and she's just, her heart's melting because she may think this is the real guy. And he's talking your bride into giving him oral sex. Now, if you could transport yourself into that guy's living room right now, would you have anything to share with him right then? Would you? I mean, you'd fix the guy's little red wagon for trying to touch your bride. That's my bride. That's my bride. Hands off. You wouldn't say, go on ahead, man. As long as you guys feel comfortable with it, this is all good. Just go on ahead. Yep, it's good to have experience before you're married. That's fine. Just go on ahead. No, that guy's defrauding you. And this stuff hit me because I got married. I didn't get married. I watched a friend get married. And this guy married a girl that I dated for 2 years. And I went to the wedding. And I'm sitting there in the pews watching. They're standing up on the altar. And he's lifting his veil, and he kissed her. And I just sat there, and I was like, whoa, this is sort of weird. That guy kissed the girl that I used to kiss. And I kissed that guy's bride. And, I held her in this way and that way and this, and I'm like, wait a minute. I defrauded that guy. Something that was rightfully his. She was not mine, even if I thought she was. And I should have treated her with more respect than I did. And it's tough to step back and honestly look at these things. But the thing is God has stamped onto you a desire to love like he loves. And so long as we don't, we miss the whole point of our existence. It's that big of a deal. So oral sex, in your heart that you would go nuts if some guy was trying to persuade your future bride to do that with him. And so have respect for one another, because you might end up marrying the girlfriend of the guy next to you. So take these things to heart. Another one like it is, having oral sex mean that you're not a virgin? Physiologically, no. You don't lose your virginity when you have oral sex. But let's not get all picky about titles. Let's just physically retain the virginity and then let all else go. We'll end up just killing ourselves and girls. I know one guy who said, he was in college, he said, the one thing I regret about high school is when I single-handedly destroyed a girl. That's it. And he just destroyed because he thought that sex is fun and this and this. And one of my good friends right now just found out that his girlfriend has cervical cancer. And she was a virgin when she met him. And this guy sat on my floor and cried, just bawled, that finally he had met a girl that he really loved, and instead of truly loving her, he ended up giving her cervical cancer. And I don't tell you these things to scare the pants off you. I tell this to scare the pants back onto you. No, just kidding. It's not the motivation that I have for doing this stuff. I don't want to scare you guys into doing anything. I just have the same intention. I don't say, you guys need to be like me. Forget it. We need to say, all of us guys, if we're honest with ourselves, and I trust that you have good hearts, if we're honest with ourselves, we know that our sexuality is wounded and that we need to all be like Christ, and that's it. So, how do you know about sex if you're a virgin? Okay, legitimate question. Let's see. Do I know anything about suicide? Yeah. Do I have to commit suicide to know anything about it? Obviously not, or I wouldn't know much about it if I was dead. Also, if you had cancer, would you only go to a doctor who also had cancer? Would you go, well, you don't have cancer, doctor? Oh, what the hell? And you know about cancer if you don't have it. Oh my God, I got to go find a cancerous doctor. No, you don't need to have a particular thing to know about it. Logically, that doesn't follow. But I have read, I know how a woman's uterus works. I don't have one. I have no uterus, but I've studied anatomy and physiology. I've taken college class in embryology to know how this stuff works. And I've studied demographics in high school, and I've talked to 10,000 high school students a month. And I see the tears of the guys and of the girls sitting there with me, because I usually do the one-on-one counseling afterwards. And when a high school couple has sex, the average length that the relationship will last after that is 21 days, and it's gone. It's over. And that's just from studying the stats. And I don't need to sleep with a girl and break up with her to know that that's usually what happens. I know sex is not good before marriage, but what about all the other stuff? Is that up to us, how comfortable we feel? What? We know it's not how comfortable we feel, because you might be comfortable with raping a girl. I might be comfortable. Well, it feels quite comfortable for me. But that doesn't mean that it's morally good. And so you can't determine the morality of act of, well, my hormones say to do it. Well, that must mean it's good. It's good, it's natural. Let's imagine I get married and I cheat on my wife, because I've got this really cute secretary, and so I cheat on my wife. I come home, and honey said, oh, how was work today, hon? And I said, oh, girl, this work was great today. It was just a good time at the office. Then I slept with my secretary, so I had an affair on you, and the drive home was pleasant, so it was a good day. And she well, you did what? And I go, oh, I slept with the secretary. And it was good, and it was natural. And she's like, you did what? And she starts throwing my belongings onto the front lawn and stuff. And I'm like, girl, chill out. And she's like, what? And I go, it was totally natural. And would she be like, oh, it was natural? Oh, okay, I thought it was unnatural. No, when you get married, you are going to be severely attracted to people who are not your wife. But if you do not learn to say no to sex with them now, how, like when we get married, we're not going to have a little fairy that's going to fly over you, like sprinkle fidelity dust on your head, and you'll suddenly know how to love a woman. Because I know a guy who got married to a girl. She was my friend, both of my friends. They got divorced in 3 months because he was addicted to all the pornography stuff. And if when I get married, it's all good because I can just do it with her and then I won't have the desires. And he just transferred the lust onto her, and the marriage completely collapsed. The lust was not healed. It was just transferred onto his wife. And so we need to honestly root out this stuff, extract it, and have the courage to do that stuff, and really look to God and say, what do you think about this? Because if you say, well, what if you really love your girl? Then can you sort of do this and this? But imagine you're doing this and this and this with your girlfriend, and then you look over, and Jesus Christ is sitting on the couch opposite from you, watching you guys. Would you be like, want to stop and get all embarrassed? Why? Because if love incarnate is in the room, and you really love each other, then you should be thrilled to have love himself watching it all. But the thing is we know that the discomfort is there because something in our actions we know just doesn't conform to love. And that's why that shame would be there. And so just open your hearts, turn them to God, and you guys don't need morality flashcards. Like, is this okay? Oh, that one says no. Is this one okay? Oh, we can do this together. Because it's all already written on your heart. Just think, do I want some guy doing this with my bride? If no, then respect his future bride. So those are a couple little ways. If you've been in a relationship or heavily flirt on the internet, how can you regain trust with your now serious girlfriend and stop the emails, secret phone calls, and stop heavily flirting over the internet, instant messenger, stuff like that? Okay, I would say this. If you don't learn faithfulness now, I wish you the best of luck learning it then. And if you train yourself to get all excited by these forbidden relationships, then where are you going to find that excitement in marriage? Same place, forbidden relationships. And you don't want to do that to your kids or to your bride's heart. And so learn faithfulness now. What would you say if 2 people had premarital sex but ended up getting married? That's great that they ended up getting married or whatever, but it doesn't make it okay. Because if you what is sex? Sex is the wedding vows made flesh. You're saying with your body what you said with your lips on the altar. I am entirely yours. And unless you are entirely hers, it's a lie. Premarital sex is a lie. It's a lie in the language of the body. Your body is saying, I give myself completely to you until I give myself completely to someone else, and then completely to someone else. There's a dishonesty there. Also, just so you know how your brain works, there's a thing that guys are going to release during intercourse. It's called oxytocin. It's a hormone. And girls have oxytocin too. They release it during childbirth, during breastfeeding, and during intercourse. We only release it during intercourse since we don't do the other 2 things that often, so it's just during intercourse, and it's just the way it works. And what oxytocin does is 3 things. It'll decrease your critical thinking abilities, it will impair your memory, and it will also cause you a great bond with whoever it is that you're with when you experience the release of oxytocin into your system. And so think of that. In marriage, that's great. You feel really bonded to this girl. You feel very close, and she forgets that you left the toilet seat open, and you're bonded. You know, the critical element of criticizing the relationship is so much gone because you sort of have one eye closed to the other person's faults. But now let's take that outside of marriage. What ends up happening? You have this great feeling of bonding to this girl. You feel so close to her, but you can't critically look at the relationship. And that's why guys who get married as virgins, their divorce rate is 71% lower than those who won't wait for marriage. 71% lower. Some of you guys are thinking, well, great. Well, I'm not a virgin. I mean, I'm going to get messed up and end up in a divorce just like my parents and my brother and this and that and that. They did some studies, and they found out that couples who do not use contraception in marriage, there's a thing called natural family planning. Couples who don't use contraception, all the plugs and drugs and jellies and jams and all that other stuff, couples who don't use that stuff have a divorce rate 1,000% lower. Couples use this natural family planning, which is the natural rhythms of a woman's body, have a divorce rate 1,000% less than those who use contraception. So don't use the contraception in marriage. I don't think it's worth it. It's bad for a girl's body. If your girlfriend is on the pill right now, you shoot over to her after this talk. If she's on it to keep from getting pregnant, and you tell her, hun, off the pill. They've done studies that have found out that if a girl is on the birth control pill prior to her first full-term pregnancy, her risk of having breast cancer goes up about 40%. It's bad for the girl. It's bad for her. And so if you're pressuring her to get on the pill so you don't get pregnant with her for love, just take her off. and put her on self-control, instead of the birth control. And I think you'll be blessed for that act of generosity towards her. Okay, we got 2 left. What is the point of using the word forever? Forever is a long time. For all you know, you could be lying to the one you love. Okay, the point of using the word forever. If I don't intend to love a girl forever, I will find it difficult to love her for even one day. Because the whole language of love speaks permanence. It doesn't say, girl, I love you so much that I'll totally stick with you until you get annoying. That's how much I love you. No, love means whatever comes, girl, we're going to be able to overcome it. We're going to make it. That's the very language of love. It just speaks permanence. When you have sex, your body speaks permanence. I'm totally yours forever. Love knows nothing about conditions, nothing. And you're not lying if you tell someone something that you believe to be true. Logically, I took philosophy classes and stuff like that. You could be telling someone something that's false and still be telling the truth. This is what I mean. If I said to you guys, Ellen, right now, Ellen Marie is in the theater talking. I would think what I'm telling you is true. But let's say they just had a little fire alarm or whatever, they all had to run out. What I'd be telling you would be false because she's outside, but I'm not lying to you because I tell you what I believe is true. And so likewise, if something ends up going wrong down the road and you end up having to go separate ways for whatever reason, you weren't lying back then because you really had sincerity on your heart. And I know that God will complete the good work that He's begun in you. If you tell Him, God, I want to be with this girl for life, He'll give you the grace to do it. Half the marriages end in divorce. But there's a real turnaround going around with this generation. Turn it around. Some of you guys might be thinking, well, my folks all got married and stuff like that. I don't want to do it. Perhaps God wants to raise you up so that your grandchildren will look to you. I want a marriage like Grandpa has. He's really stuck to it. And just trust in Him because He can do it. Lastly, how do you say I love you truthfully and romantically? Well, for one, talk is cheap. Talk is real cheap. And so do not say it so much with your words as you say it with your actions because they speak much louder. For how to do it romantically, one dude, he asked me, how do you say you're going to be pure and stuff without feeling like a geek? And I said, well, sometimes being a geek is excessively romantic. And I said, well, what I mean is this. When you get married and you lift that girl's veil and then you go off to the honeymoon suite and you go off to your honeymoon, you can tell her all the names that they called you. Yeah, the guys in the locker room said I was this, and they called me a this. They wrote this in my backpack, spray painted that on my locker, called me this at the party, da-da-da-da-da. And you can tell your bride how much of a geek and all sorts of other stuff that the guys call you. And I'll tell you, your bride will spend the whole honeymoon telling you how much of a geek that she thinks you is. Thinks you are. Because think you is. Because it's just sometimes it's romantic to basically not be completely moved by what your friends think. And that's what love is. It just doesn't give in to pressure and stuff like that. So have the courage. If someone's pressuring you to have sex, why? Why do you think the pressure's there? Do you think it's because their sexual lives are so fulfilling that they want just to let you in on that secret? No. It's because you guys are setting the standard high. It might make them feel guilty, so they want to tear you down so they feel better about their behavior. So don't give in. This chastity stuff, it's not the easiest path, but it's the best one. And I'll pay you guys money if you regret it. I will pay you money. I'll give you $50 out of my pocket if you live this and you regret it. You have an offer like that by Jerry Springer or Howard Stern, MTV Beach House Party. If you live this lifestyle and sleep around with everyone and you regret it, we'll give you $50. MTV would be broke in like 3 minutes from all the regret that would come about. But this, it's just no regret. And I've lived both lifestyles. Even if I physiologically haven't lost my virginity, I've led both lifestyles. And I guarantee you guys, this stuff works. And I just want to be real with you guys. I'm not flying out here. I'm not getting money for standing here before you guys. This is actually my vacation time that I've taken to spend 8 hours with you guys today, setting up and talking, just because I give a rip about you guys. And I want what's best for you. And this is coming from a heart of a guy that just loves you guys and would ask your prayers for myself, that I don't get in the way of God's work for me. And I promise you guys that I will pray for you. And I invite you again to sign your name in the Bible. And I promise to pray for you. May we become men of prayer. Because the world is going through a crisis because men do not pray much or they pray little and they pray badly. And so let's not leave the affairs of the kingdom of heaven up to women and think that spreading the gospel is an eminently feminine task and they can do the praying. Let's raise the task, be men of prayer, and shine like lights to the world. Love you guys. God bless you. Thanks a lot.
Okay. It is an honor, ladies, to be back with just you. So what we're going to do for the next segment is take some of the questions that you wrote down earlier and talk just women to women about some of the issues about dating and relationships. I have these questions with me. I will go over them. I will also share a few other points just from the female perspective. That's what we're going to do this session, okay? Everybody set? Wonderful. And I want to thank you in advance for those of you that gave me these questions so that I can look them over. The first question asks, what do you think is okay to do on a date? Is kissing okay? Is holding hands okay? What is bad and what is good? Do you know that is probably the number one question I get, which is how far is too far? Now, we talked in the program earlier that oral sex you can get sexually transmitted diseases from. That would be considered very far too far. Then people always ask, well, what about kissing, holding hands? That's a tough thing for me to answer exactly how far someone should go, because it depends on how old you are, it depends on your relationship, and different things like that. So in that case, I think each of you have to decide, what is the purpose of this intimacy? Is it because you want to express that you care about this person, or is it just out of lust? And those are two of the questions you want to ask when you're in a dating relationship. Okay, the next question. Ooh, this is a tough one. How do you know when a guy says that he loves you, how do you know that he really means it? Boy, you know, I bet guys ask the same question. When a girl says that she loves us, how do they know they really mean it? I think it's a couple of things. First off, by the way he acts towards you, by the things that he says. I think one of the benefits I'll tell you about waiting to have a sexual relationship is that you never have to guess. Is this guy dating me because we're having a sexual relationship, or is he dating me because he loves me? Because when you do not have a sexual relationship, you know that he's interested in getting to know you more, because you're not having that sexual relationship. Does that mean sex is bad? Not at all. It means it is so powerful that it can bond two people together. There's a book out there, and it's called Finding the Love of Your Life by Neil Clark Warren, and I love this book. It talks about different issues to decide whether or not this is a good person to date. He says something in there that I think is a critical point. He said once a couple starts having sex before they're married, they forfeit their ability to look clearly at that relationship. In other words, you can feel in love when you're really in lust. And I think a guy can feel in love when he's really in lust. And so when someone says, how do I know if he really loves me? First off, you need to take time to let him get to know you as a person, your thoughts, your needs, your wants. And you know, for some of you in this room, you may be dating somebody who's a guy that isn't ready to really know what love is. Do you know that, and I mentioned this earlier and I truly believe it, for some of you, many of you in this room, your true love you're going to find when you're in college or 21 or 22, 23. If you're dating right now, this is a good chance to figure out how to relate to the opposite sex, figure out how to determine what is it that I like in someone. In this book that I co-authored, this one right here, called Teen Power, I talk in there about how to know if you're in love or how to know if you're in lust. And one of the things is that a lot of people are afraid of rejection, aren't we? Because we don't want this guy to break up with us. We don't want this person to reject us. Look at it this way. When you're dating somebody, either two things are going to happen. You're either going to end up marrying this person and staying with them, or you're going to break up with them. And I want to tell you straight out, it's okay if you're dating someone and you decide they're not the right person. The best thing to do is to be honest with the person and say, you know, it just didn't seem to work out. And I know that guys hate it when we say, I just want to be friends. Yes. But there's some truth to that. It could be a couple of things. One is because it's not the right person, and we don't need to feel bad if it's not the right person. Or it also could be that it's not the right time for you. You may not be ready. Timing has a lot to do with the relationship. But don't feel, I want to encourage you to not stay with a relationship with a guy for the wrong reason. I remember in high school when I would date someone and I decided it just didn't seem to be working out. And sometimes I'd actually stay with the guy longer because I didn't know how to break up with him. I didn't know how to say I didn't want to date him, and I figured maybe we'll just date a little longer. And I remember one guy was going to break up with him on Halloween, and then I thought maybe Christmas, and I thought, well, right after Valentine's Day, and then it was Easter. I dated him for months without thinking he was the right guy. And then you know what I realized? Is I don't want to be in a relationship with a guy if he's not sure if it's me and he just doesn't have the guts to break up. It's better just to break up and move on. If it's the right person, you'll know that later. But it's okay. And that also means it's okay if somebody decides we're not the right person. Maybe some of you have had someone break up with you and you're devastated and you think, am I ever going to meet anyone? Well, think about it this way. If you look around school here, and there's a lot of nice guys here, and there's a lot of nice guys in this town, but can you guarantee that the person that's best for you is living right now in this city? So I want to encourage you that if some of you have just had someone break up with you, or maybe you just broke up with someone, not to think that you're never going to meet someone, because you probably will. Okay, this is another really good one. What do you tell a friend who is in a bad relationship, but they don't want to see they're in a bad relationship because they are in love? Well, when I ran the Crisis Pregnancy Center, it was very common for a girl to come in, sit down, and give her, of course you give her a pregnancy test, I mean, that's why they're there. But I gave a girl a pregnancy test, and obviously everyone's sexually active. You don't come in for a pregnancy test unless you're sexually active. So I'd always ask things like, how's your relationship going? How are things here? How are things there? And I remember what I had to do when I wanted someone to be thinking about their relationship. I didn't just tell them, you know what, you're in an awful relationship, get out. Because that was too strong. Instead, I started asking them questions. I'd ask questions like, so, tell me about your boyfriend. Tell me what you like about your boyfriend. Tell me how your relationship is going. And then they started to come up with some of the reasons why they wanted to break up. And if you are someone in this room who has a really good friend who's in a bad relationship, whether he's controlling or there might be abuse, or you can see the relationship's based on sex, my recommendation to you is a couple of things. First, talk to your friend and ask her questions. Don't tell her what to do right away. Ask her questions about how she's feeling about the relationship. And then ask her this question, if she's sexually active. If you stopped having a sexual relationship, do you think your relationship would still be going on? Do you think he'd still stay with you? And then if she says, well, yes, of course, say, why don't you try it? And find out what it's really based on. And start to develop those things I showed you in the pyramid. I can remember a friend of mine who I was talking with, and she came to me and she said, Ellen, I'm in love. This is the guy. Finally, I met him. And I'll call her Susie. I said, Susie, how long have you been dating this guy? I didn't even know you had a boyfriend. She said, we've been dating about 3 weeks. So you know what I asked her? I said, Susie, are you sure this is the right one? She said, absolutely. And I said, you're having a sexual relationship. You're having sex with him, aren't you? And she said, yes. She and I have different values. And I said, tell me one thing you like about this guy. She said, what? I said, tell me one thing that makes this guy different than the other guys you've dated. And she said, why do you always ask me the most difficult questions? And I said, Susie, you are not in love. You're in what? Lust. You're in lust. Absolutely. And you know what? She broke up with him and ended up getting married to a different guy. And I think it just took her a few different relationships. But luckily, she didn't get pregnant during any of those, but she could have. Okay. So my recommendation, if you have a friend, just be kind, talk to them about it. Give them some handouts. Introduce them to Jason. He'll convince him, won't he? Okay, how can you tell if it's love or lust? Well, I went through a lot of books to put this together, and I came up with some points. I'm going to leave this book in your library, so if you want to read more, it goes over how to know if you're in love or infatuated, fun things to do on a date to avoid the temptations of sex, how to communicate on a date. And I'm going to tell you a couple of these things that I put in here. When you're thinking to yourself if you're in love or infatuated, love tends to want what's best for the other person. You're dating this person and you want what's best for them. Love tends to look at more than just one issue. Maybe you're in love with somebody because he's on the football team, or because everyone else likes him, or because he's really smart. That's good qualities. Or maybe you think he's very handsome. That's good. However, is that the only thing? If it can't go any deeper than that, it's probably not love. It's infatuation. And love means you even like the things that are not so good about the person, which would mean that you'll love them because you get along well, you have things in common, because you can talk about issues, but you might even like the fact that sometimes they're a little, you might even put up with the fact that sometimes they're a little late, but talk to them about it. Now, I want to make a clear point. I'm not recommending that if you're in love with somebody and they're abusive, they drink too much, they're into drugs, that you'll say, well, I love them, so I'll accept that. You can be in love with someone who may not be the best person for you to stay with. And it takes guts to recognize the difference. Just because you're in love doesn't mean it's somebody you want to commit to. But love really does accept that people aren't perfect. Some of the other things I put in here is respecting each other's qualities, admiring them, attracted to many qualities. I think it's very important also to share things in common. To have things that you like to do together, whether you like to do sports together, whether you like to read, whether you like to go to the movies, something that keeps your relationship growing as a team. On the other hand, infatuation, usually you're attracted to just one thing about the person. It's associated with little growth. In other words, you're not growing together, you're not communicating with the person. And it's also associated, infatuation is associated with a lot of jealousy, because you're afraid that that person is not going to be trusted. You're afraid that that person is out dating somebody else. You know, sometimes as women, we almost get into we want to control a guy because we don't want him to go out with someone else. You got to let go, because if he's the right person, he's going to pursue you. And if he's not, then there's somebody else out there better that will treat you the way you deserve to be treated. And I really, really see, if you set the standard high, you're going to draw a guy that attracts to that, to setting the standard high. Another thing about infatuation is it's based on going out with a person because of their reputation and because of the reputation you get while being with them, because they're popular, not because you like them as a person. And again, some of this develops over time as you get to know a different person. Okay, this one says, what if we are in a sexual relationship, we like it, we don't want to wait? Well, that's very understandable, because sex is a good thing. And we are not saying that the reason to be abstinent is because you hate sex. Not at all. Not at all. Jason doesn't agree with that. I don't agree with that. It can be true, and it is true, that in a relationship you enjoy being with another person physically. But questions you want to ask yourself are this: are you ready to be a parent? That's the first question. I was with a girl who was a senior in high school. I counseled her, sat down with her, and I asked her the question I ask all the people in the crisis center: are you ready to be a parent? Now, she looked at me, and I already knew her answer, but I wanted to hear it from her. She looked down. She had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old with her. And she said to me, "Ma'am, I cannot afford a third baby. I am a senior in high school." And I said, "You're right. You can't." That day, I gave her lots of things. In the summertime, when I worked at the crisis center, I gave out baby clothing, strollers, car seat, diapers, shoes, boots, bags of stuff all the time, every single day, to people your age that had children. And I'm not complaining, because I'm glad that they carried their child to term. However, I saw a lot of heartache. And I saw a lot of relationships that after the child was born, the relationship was over. This girl was dating a guy for 8 months before she got pregnant. The relationship went through the pregnancy, they broke up. She's with her second boyfriend. They dated for 5 months before she got pregnant. The relationship went through the pregnancy, then they broke up. Now she's on her third boyfriend. They've been dating 5 months. And when I asked her, "Why are you sexually active?" this is what she told me. She looked at me first shocked, and then she said, "Because it's fun. It's fun. Everybody at high school is doing it. It's really not a big deal." Wow. And you know what I said to her? I said, "You're right. It is a good thing. However, not at all times." I said, "You're right, it's a good thing, but do you know that it's not you paying the price only, it's who else? Your kids." You're absolutely right. The children. I said, "Do you recognize it's not just you, it's your children that are paying the price?" And all of us in this room as women, it's great talking just to women, we all know the gift of the fact that we can bring children into this world. This is very powerful. And sometimes I think to myself, when I'm out on a date with someone and I really like them and I'm tempted to have a sexual relationship, I think to myself, if I had a child with this individual, we're not committed in marriage, we don't know if it's going to last, would I be able to tell my children, "You know, honey, I'm really sorry I had you with someone who's not around anymore. I'm really sorry I had you when I wasn't ready, but honey, he was cute." Would my child go, "Oh, I get it"? Or, I mean, "Honey, it was prom. We were drunk." And I think and I know I'm kind of making light of it, but the reason I'm making light of it, those are ridiculous excuses, aren't they? Those are ridiculous excuses. One of my friends has had an abortion, and then she's had another child. And I've talked with her about this, and she said, "You know, Ellen, I was just having fun. I was just doing what everyone else is doing. I wasn't even thinking about the fact about my child." And she said, "I thought it was fun to have casual sex." And she said, "My son, he's now in 1st grade. He thinks it would be fun to have a dad. And he doesn't have one." And as women, what a gift we have that we can bring life into this world. And I tell you, you're going to love that child so much. I speak at a school where all the girls are pregnant. And it's a school, they pull them out of the public school, it's a small school, and they put them into a program. And I asked the woman there, she's been there for 25 years, she's the leader, 25 years this lady has been at this school helping teen girls that are pregnant. And I asked her this question. I said, how many of these girls that are pregnant, how many of them end up getting married to the guy that they had a child with in high school? And she said, we don't track them to marriage. We only track them for 1 year because they're required the next year to come back and to be in a class to learn about parenting. And she said within 1 year, only about 10 or 20% are still dating the guy they had a child with. So we know that just having a child with somebody is not going to keep the relationship together, but secondly, it not only hurts us, it hurts other people. And another thing is that, yes, sex is a good thing, but before marriage, it can be very confusing. And this pyramid that I showed you earlier, that I talked about, all these things we all need and want. And I challenge you to set a foundation like this and not set a foundation like that, to make it more clear to build these things. And let me tell you why it helps by waiting from a guy's perspective. I have this book here that I really like. Maybe you've heard of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Anyone heard of that book? Okay, most people. This is called Mars and Venus on a Date. And this, I've highlighted the whole thing. I've gone through it. It's very good. I want to tell you something in here I think is wisdom from this guy's point of view. I want you to listen. I want you to think about your relationship. He talks about the importance of a woman respecting herself and waiting to have a sexual relationship because it helps a man learn all those steps to develop his love for her. Listen to this. Listen closely. The wisdom of waiting to be intimate is that a man's desire has a chance to grow into a higher level of expression. His physical desire to be with a woman will expand into an emotional desire to please that woman, and his desire to please her will then in turn develop a genuine interest in who she is as a person. Okay, I added a couple words in there at the end. Now this one is another thing. It goes on to say that no matter what a man receives, he feels better about it when he has actually pursued it and achieved it on his own. And then it goes one step further to say, and this is the point, sometimes us women, we think if I give a guy sex, if I give a guy this, if I give a guy that, I'm going to convince him to like me. I read this quote from a girl. She said, you can never sleep your way into a guy's heart. Isn't that true? How many of you agree with that? You cannot sleep your way into a guy's heart. You bet. And in this, it's very interesting. It says right here, when a woman shifts to trying to earn a man's love and attention, she doesn't even have a clue that she is actually preventing him from becoming interested in her and pursuing her. It's an attitude that a woman has when she is self-assured that draws a man to be more interested in her. Now, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was your age. To understand that men and women think a little bit differently and that guys want to respect us. Men are looking for women to respect, and they're looking for us to respect ourselves. And that means understanding that we need to let a guy get to know us as a person. What are our likes? What are our dislikes? To figure out if he loves us for who we are personally. Not just what's a sexual relationship about. Not just letting a guy say, okay, I'm having a sexual relationship with her. That fulfills my needs. And then never getting to know us. Because if he's going to fall in love with you, he has to know you first. Now, again, that doesn't mean that sex is bad. It means it's so good, it's so powerful, it can cloud your vision. So the longer you prolong waiting to have a sexual relationship, the more chance is you base it on the solid foundation. Now, I cannot say that 100% of the time, if you know someone, they had a sexual relationship before marriage, that the marriage won't work. That's not true at all. There's no complete absolutes. But you do err on the side of confusion if you have sex before marriage. That can happen and does happen. Does it 100% of the time? No, I'd be ridiculous to say 100%, but it does and can happen. Now, if you are saying to yourself, Ellen, I am not a virgin, this program isn't for virgins. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what do you want in the relationship that you're in. And some of us women, we compromise to please a guy who's not even going to be here in a few months. We compromise on our morals to get this guy to like us when really we need to set the standard high, develop ourselves as a person so that when we're ready for marriage and we meet that guy, we have more to offer him. And I mean more to offer him as you developed yourself, you became a better person. One of my close friends didn't date at all in high school. She didn't even date in college. And I never heard her complain. I never said, woe is me, I don't even have a date. She just kept making herself a better person, interested in things. She went on to school, got a master's degree, and then she went out for sport after that. She was involved in sports, and she met her husband. They're happily married. They have 2 children. And one thing I really liked about what she did, and I was very impressed, is that she just kept making herself a better person. So when she was ready for marriage, she met this guy and she had a lot to offer. She wasn't feeling sorry for herself. She wasn't compromising on her values to get another guy to like her. She just liked herself for who she was. And some of you in this room, maybe you're saying, Ellen, I don't look like the person on the front cover of a magazine. I'm not tall enough. I'm too short. I'm too tall. I'm too wide. I'm too thin. You know what? I'll guarantee you this right now. The person that falls in love with you is going to like you for exactly who you are. You don't have to look like her. You don't have to look like her. You don't have to look like anybody in the front cover of a magazine. They're not always that happy. Looks really don't determine necessarily somebody's happiness. What determines their happiness is how they feel about themselves and the relationships they get into. Okay. If you've had oral sex, is it considered losing your virginity? It is not considered losing your virginity if you've had oral sex. To lose your virginity would have to be intercourse. And so you are still a virgin if you have not had sexual intercourse with a man. Then you're still a virgin. And I have some friends that have been raped. And they say to me, Ellen, I didn't make that choice to be raped. I was raped. And they tell me, and I like this attitude, they said, in my mind, I'm still a virgin because I have not given away my sexuality yet. So they recommit to their purity, and then they start over again. And I really like that attitude. I think it's very good. And even if somebody made the choice to be sexually active, to recommit to their purity. This person told me not to read this out loud, so I'm not going to, but I'm going to paraphrase. It's something about, and I know this happens, about people going out at night, guys and girls, and they ended up having slumber parties, so to speak. And they said, is that going to be tempting? That seems to be the thing these days. Oftentimes, the different schools I'm in, where people after prom hang out together, they sleep overnight in the same bed. Let me say this to you. If you are dating someone, and you're wondering, should I sleep in the same bed, and will it be tempting? If it is not tempting at all, you're probably with the wrong guy, okay? You got a problem if you're not tempted. So here's my recommendation. It's a tough thing to be sleeping with a guy next to him and think that nothing at all is going to happen, you know? That's like taking an ice cube, throwing it in the fire and think, is it going to melt? Yeah. It's a good thing if you're attracted to somebody. So if your goal is to not be sexually active, if your goal is to keep your purity, if your goal is to be respected, if you put yourself in a tempting situation, it's going to be tempting and it's going to be tough. And it's better to draw the line way back. Draw the line way back so you're not in a tempting situation. This one says, how do I know if I have a sexually transmitted disease? There's a lot of different ways to know if you have a sexually transmitted disease. And sometimes they have symptoms, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's pain when you're urinating. Sometimes you get a lesion from a herpes virus. Sometimes you get a wart. Many times you do not have symptoms, like chlamydia. The majority of the females will not have any symptoms. If it goes undetected, some of the women will end up getting pelvic inflammatory disease, which can lead to infertility. So if someone has been sexually active, it is important to go get tested. There are places in your community, you look in the yellow pages, and you go get tested. It's better to know. I know some people tell me, I don't want to know. It's just better to know, because some of them are curable. And if you have one that is not curable, the 4 H's, herpes, hepatitis, HPV, and HIV, then at least you know how to deal with it. Okay. Here's one that I put down because I wanted to mention it to you, because I get this one a lot from different girls. And they say, what if you don't want to have a sexual relationship, but your friends think you're a prude? They ask, what if you're in a relationship and your boyfriend thinks you're a prude if you don't have a sexual relationship? Or what if your friends are calling you a prude, or they're calling you this, calling you that? Well, it comes down to a couple of things. First off, I think it's interesting that today in our society, for a lot of females that talk to me, they feel obligated to have a sexual relationship, otherwise they're considered abnormal. And it's gotten that bad in our society. One girl I spoke with, she was worried about being pregnant, and I said, why are you sexually active with a guy you're not married to? And you know what she said to me? She said, because I was worried if I didn't, he would think I was a prude. And there she was worrying about being pregnant. And I realized that we don't have sexual freedom if we have to have a sexual relationship to either keep the relationship or not feel abnormal. And if I may, I just want you to think about this. One of the reasons I talk on this issue is because when I have children, and when you have children, I want my children to grow up in a world where they feel that they can have the freedom to say no to a sexual relationship and not feel abnormal. And the last 10 to 20 years, things keep getting worse and worse until abstinence has been promoted. So if there's a lot of pressure now, what is it going to be like for us when we have children? And it is you ladies in this room that are going to make the difference in what it's going to be like for our children, because you set the norm. If you accept in society that sex is no big deal, that it's okay to have a sexual relationship with somebody just because they're cute, because you want to, because you don't want to be a prude, because you're curious, because it feels good, people are going to continue to think the mentality is sex is no big deal. And if it's no big deal now, it will continue to be no big of a deal. So I want to challenge you on this. I want to challenge you to help change this culture that we believe that sex is a good thing, but for marriage, so that when you have children and I have children, when they grow up, they have the freedom to not feel like a prude if they want to wait. What do you think of that? Does that make sense? Who agrees with that? Okay. And again, going back to it's not because sex is a bad thing. There's an article that I found I really like, and it's with Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey. And it came from a magazine article, and in the article, Nick was asked, because Jessica made the decision for both, or they made the decision together to be abstinent until marriage. And he's asked in this interview, is Jessica's decision to be abstinent from sex a hard thing to deal with? And he said, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but I respect her, and I think it's very sexy. You know why I think it's very sexy? I think for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because when you say, I want you to get to know me first, it's sexy because then it says I have a lot to offer more than just my body. And the second thing is that when you have a life of your own, if you want a guy to pursue you, if you want a guy to be interested in you, continue to have a life in your own. Don't just drop all your friends, drop everything and say, I found this guy. Because oftentimes guys will then feel pressure to make a commitment, and it gives, when a girl does not pursue a guy, and a girl has a life of her own in addition to dating the guy, but she has a life of her own, she has her own friends, she has other things to do, it exerts zero pressure on a guy to say that he has to commit at that moment to a long-term marital relationship. And what it does is it gives him the freedom to develop a relationship with you. So my encouragement to you, my last encouragement to you, is when you do find someone that you really like a lot and you're spending time with him, don't dump your friends. Keep your friends. You're going to need them to bounce things off of. You're going to need them to talk to, and you're going to need them to be intimate with, because a guy cannot be everything. He cannot be 100%. Neither does he want to be, because you don't want to be 100% for a guy, do you? You don't want to be his whole world and have to be responsible for his happiness. Okay? All right, I want to thank you so much for listening today. We're out of time, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.